Welcome back, accomplices. Get ready for another dose of true crime.
If you thought we were kidding when we said we'd be back again this week, no hard feelings. I would have doubted us too.
That's fucking rude, but also same. So, as you guys know, we like to give you guys a little more than just the case, but without all the boring filler jargon.
What better way to do that than to give you more crime?
We are starting a segment called Weekly Crime Reports. Each week, provided that there is something worth sharing, we will review a shocking or intriguing crime story. Sometimes there might be more than one from the past week. This week on Weekly Crime Report, we have in Amherst, New York, a prominent critic of child abuse stands accused of committing six. My God, I'm so stoned. My mouth is so dry. Sorry, guys. So a prominent critic of child abuse stands accused of committing sex crimes against minors. New York State Police announced April 9th that authorities arrested 49-year-old John Tudaro on charges of promoting a sexual performance by a child and possessing a sexual performance. What the fuck? Why do you keep laughing? Like, you're throwing me off. What's so fucking funny?
His last name, right after his last name, you have like this, like how you sound it out right next to it.
Yeah.
You were still saying instead of two.
Oh, whatever. Okay. The Bureau of Criminal Investigation worked with the Troop A Computer Crimes Unit and determined Tudaro allegedly had child pornography in his possession and was distributing it. Tudaro is reportedly the vice president and an active member of the Buffalo chapter of Bikers Against Child Abuse. According to the organization's website, their mission is to, quote, create a safer environment for abused children and to empower children to not feel afraid in the world in which they live. Tudaro would reportedly, quote, have had opportunities to be around children and child victims. Tudaro appeared in court for his arraignment and was released. He is set to return to court in May. And in other news, also coming from New York, authorities are searching for a suspect they allege had sexual relations with a corpse on a subway train this week. According to WABC TV, the New York Police Department said in the early hours of April 9th, an unidentified man performed sex acts on the body of a deceased homeless man on the southbound R train near the Whitehall Street subway station in Lower Manhattan. WABC reports that the suspect allegedly waited for moments when the train was empty to assault the corpse. The news source said investigators obtained surveillance footage showing the sex acts, and investigators reportedly believe the body was on the train hours before the incident. According to WABC, police determined the victim likely died of natural causes. The suspect was reportedly last seen wearing a blue baseball cap, black hooded jacket, yellow sweatshirt, jeans, and red and white shoes. He was also carrying a backpack. Authorities have asked anyone with information regarding the assault to contact police. So if you're in the New York area, Manhattan, and you see somebody like that, phone it in. Both of these cases were sourced from True Crime News.
All right. So we are going to jump into the case this week.
Super excited.
Me too. I told you how I came across this one, right?
No, I don't think so, actually.
Oh, okay. Well, I explain it, so I guess you'll learn.
Okay, cool.
With everyone else.
Perfect. I love surprises.
Perfect. Okay. So, Chevie O'Brien Kehoe was born on January 29th, 1973 in Orange Park, Florida. He was the oldest of 8 sons born to Kirby and Gloria Kehoe, and was named after his father's favorite brand of automobile, the Chevrolet.
I know somebody who named their child Chevy, but they do not spell it like how Chevy is sound. Like they spell it how Chevy is sound, how it sounds, and not like how it's actually spelled.
With like an SH?
Yes.
That's weird. I've never seen that.
Yeah. Sorry. Continue.
Hey. His father was a skilled auto mechanic who had served in the Navy during the Vietnam War. Returning home with a skin rash that ultimately was diagnosed as a rare form of cancer. Kirby, of course, blamed exposure to Agent Orange. When Chevy was an infant, his father moved the family to Madison County, North Carolina. They continued to move all around from Florida to Arkansas and pretty much everywhere in between until 1985, when Kirby moved the family again, this time to a 20-acre property near Deep Lake in Stevens County, Washington. Heyo.
Oh my God.
Yeah, this is pretty.
That's right down the road from me. That's 6 miles from me.
Yeah. Stevens County is right there with us.
Yeah.
So Chevy entered Colville Junior High School as a 9th grader in 1987, where he was an honor student who dreamed of joining the Air Force and becoming a pilot. Chevy wanted to run track in school, but his parents refused. His friends were not welcome at his home because his parents grew marijuana and didn't want people coming around who would talk about it. Which, I mean, fair, because it was the 80s.
Yeah, I get that, but his house probably would have been like the party house in high school. It's because his parents didn't want to share their pot. Which also, fair.
1988, Chevy's parents pulled him and his younger brother, Shane. I believe that's how you say it. It's spelt almost like Cheyenne, like Cheyne. So, I don't know. Shane, right? I don't know. But anyways, their parents pulled him and his brother out of public school. And from then on, they were homeschooled, which honestly makes sense to me because I mapped this out. And from Colville, where their school was, to Deep Lake is almost an hour drive time. So no, thank you.
Nope. I grew up across town from my schools, and sometimes I would walk, and it still didn't even take me an hour.
I mean, lived kind of out of town.
Yeah, because didn't you live in Cleveland?
And I was the very last stop on the way home in the evenings, and I'd say it was about an hour.
Yeah.
If not more.
Yeah, but that's on the bus, like other kids. Like, if you had to drive your
Yeah,
kids,
exactly.
like, I wouldn't want to drive my kids an hour to and from school.
Yeah, I have no idea if there was a bus. I didn't do that much research into that part.
Yeah. That's okay. Probably not, honestly.
Probably not. So yeah, they pulled them out of public school to homeschool them. Their reasoning, though, was not because of the distance. They had pulled him out, though, because Kirby viewed public school as a threat. So kind of Kirby just got really anti-government as time went on. So public school was a threat. Needless to say, homeschooling did not work out great, though, because Gloria, his mom, didn't have the patience for the kids, nor was she educated herself. And eventually gave up on it altogether when Chevy was about 15. So this next part is a little fun fact and how I stumbled upon this dude. Because of this location in Deep Lake, the Kehoe family became childhood friends with their neighbor, Israel Keys, who I am going to be covering next time. And so in my research for Keys, I came across this psycho. It's all good things out of Colville, Washington.
I love when I do that, like when I'm researching a case and there are other related cases and you click on it and you're like, this guy's just as fucked up. Let's do this one too. And you just add it to the list of like cases we're going to do.
It's fun. It makes it easy, honestly.
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh, I can do this person. Yeah. And then I can do that.
Yeah, you're like, I literally just did this whole deep dive into this one guy. And then now I do a deep dive into this other guy.
Boom. Okay. So on this property near Deep Lake, the parents built pole barns, planted trees, and mostly just got by in the underground economy. Essentially, they kind of just lived off grid. From what I could tell, like in my research, not really by choice because they were very, very poor. So somewhere along the way, the family started attending a neo-Nazi Aryan Nations compound in Idaho. Of course, it was in fucking Idaho.
Hayden, Idaho is where the Aryan Nation was founded.
Yeah, so I don't know if I put it in the story because there's a lot of just back and forth.
Yeah.
Like random things, but it did mention Hayden Lake in there.
Yeah.
So yeah, they started attending that compound and a small church called the Ark, which was just north of Colville, so closer to their home. It was there that Kirby connected with the Christian identity belief that whites are the true Israelites, God's chosen people, who have a moral obligation to fight for the preservation of their race. They heard the identity.
People from Israel, they're not fucking white.
You don't have to try and convince me.
Okay, we know that I'm not religious. I don't believe in God or like any of that. But the one thing I do know is like based off of like the Bible and everything, like he's not, like Jesus was not fucking white. Like geographically. Oh, that kills me. It fucking kills me. Right there in that one sentence, your whole fucking religion is a sham. Oh God. Okay, I'm sorry. Continue.
So they heard the identity message, which also emphasizes that Jews are the children of Satan.
There's a Hail Hitler in this story. I swear to God.
No, Hitler was not mentioned in this in my research at all.
Okay.
Actually, just Nazi.
Just Nazi.
Just Nazi. In his mid-teens, Chevie met Jake Settle, a former Marine and ex-cop who was living in the area. Jake, who frequented the Aryan Nations compound with his wife Susan, shared the Kehoe family's beliefs. As Chevie matured, he became somewhat estranged from his father and came to see Jake as his mentor. A former friend recalled, quote, "He really liked Jake and looked up to him as a big brother, even a dad." It was at this compound where the family listened to the identity teachings of leader Richard Butler, who a decade before had been the inspiration for Bob Matthews and a few other young men who secretly formed a group called The Order, which of course was a racist group as well. Ultimately, Chevie would decide to avoid the mistakes of Matthews, whose downfall came largely because of the size of his group, which numbered more than 30. Following the strategy of leaderless resistance, Chevie allegedly wanted to keep his group of Aryan warriors much smaller, determined to avoid the attention of the authorities. As he grew toward manhood, Chevie became increasingly interested in polygamy, arguing that it was accepted in biblical times and permitted under the identity doctrine. He told friends and family that it was his obligation to enhance the population of the white race by having multiple wives and as many children as possible. Because, you know, we needed to have as many of this guy as possible.
No.
Why? He was just a good guy.
Just from what you said, I'm very surprised that he found one woman to fuck him. So. Was he a looker? I'm going to look at pictures of him.
I actually did not come across any pictures.
I'll look up some pictures for us and we'll get back to that at the end of the story. I'll tell you if he was good enough.
Stay tuned.
Looked good enough to have more than one wife, because personality-wise, he is lacking for sure.
Ultimately, he saw the practice of polygamy as vital to building the Aryan People's Republic that he envisioned. Also, I think I failed to put that in. That was what his Aryan group was called, was Aryan People's Republic. So I could not find what year they had married, but Chevie had married a woman named Karina Gum, who they eventually had 3 children together. And then in 1993, Susan Settle, so she was Jake Settle's wife, the one he looked up to, introduced her 18-year-old sister Angie to Chevie, who already had one wife. Women are fucking nuts, so I'm not sure how anyone can stand having more than one wife. I don't know how people can stand to have one.
Honestly, as a woman, yes, I agree with that sentiment. I guess maybe if they're all just like docile and don't talk back or anything, but like any woman with a backbone, like, fuck. Men don't want to put up with that.
So after they were introduced, Chevie later went to Angie's house in Spokane, hoping she could supply him marijuana. Before the encounter ended, Angie had agreed to become Chevie's second wife in a polygamous relationship. So he goes in for weed, comes out with weed and a second wife.
As one does.
As you should, queen.
Get a free wife with every ounce.
So, Chevie had taken both wives to the 1993 Aryan World Congress, an annual event hosted by the Aryan nations, apparently hoping to impress others that his polygamous ways would help ensure the vitality of the white race. While there, Chevie assaulted Karina, who was 7 months pregnant. She suffered a black eye and a bloody lip, and this attack was apparently because she was having trouble accepting her role in Chevie's polygamous family. So I'm guessing she didn't agree for him to have more than one wife, but of course, men make the laws, so she didn't have to have a say. Yeah. Sometime after the birth of the kid, Chevie, Karina, Angie, and the one child spent a couple of weeks in a small cabin near the Canadian border, just north of Kettle Falls, Washington. Soon after, they headed to, I'm probably going to say this wrong, Elohim City, Oklahoma, where Chevie's polygamy was accepted by others pursuing a similar lifestyle. After just 54 days of marriage, Angie grew homesick, tired of the marriage and the domestic violence that accompanied it. With the help of another woman at Elohim City, she planned to leave. She soon learned that she had an ally in Gloria Kehoe, which was Chevie's mom, who convinced her son to allow Angie to return home to her parents in Spokane. While at Elohim City, Chevie met up with a group of like-minded white supremacists. Because, nothing better than a whole gaggle of them. It is believed that beginning in 1994, that Chevie began supplying firearms to members of the Aryan Republic Army, a group that would steal $250,000 in a series of 22 bank robberies in the Midwest. It is unclear if the group, with a name remarkably similar to the Aryan People's Republic that Chevie was striving to create, was connected to him in other ways. In 1994, when Chevie was 21, Kirby and Gloria Kehoe moved their family to Kingston, Arkansas in the Ozarks. And he went every time his parents moved, he moved too, which means he took his wife and his kid with his parents as well. But they lived on that commune. Was it a commune? I think it was. Kind of stony baloney, so I'm not positive. Let me find my spot again now. So yeah, moved their family to the Ozarks. There, they became friends with a gun dealer, William Mueller, and his wife Nancy. They traveled the same gun show circuit, shared anti-government views, and identified with the Christian identity religion. But friendship did not stand in the way of profit. In January 1995, Kirby and Chevie burglarized the Mueller's home in Tilly, Arkansas, and took thousands of dollars worth of guns and silver coins and ammunition. Chevie then returned back to Washington, on the way stopping at Elohim City, where he asked an escaped convict, Farron Lovelace, to accompany him for protection. On June 12th, 1995, Kirby and Chevie mounted another fundraising operation in Colville, Washington, sending Lovelace into the home of two well-to-do grocery store owners, Malcolm and Jillian Friedman. Also, I like the wording. They mounted another fundraising operation. They were planning on stealing again.
I know, I caught that. I was like, I love that it's a fundraising operation. Really, it's theft.
You're just raising funds.
Yeah.
It's burglary.
They started the 1995 version of GoFundMe.
Lovelace later said Chevie targeted the Friedmans because he thought they were Jewish and would be easy to kill if something went wrong. Lovelace held Malcolm Friedman hostage and ordered Jillian to go out and collect cash. Then he forced the Friedmans to go to Spokane, where he set them free. I couldn't find a reasoning why they made them go all the way into Spokane and then set them free, like if they had to do something. I don't know. That's all I found on it. Soon, Chevie was staying at the Shadows Motel and RV Park in North Spokane and traveling the gun show circuit. So that motel, I looked up, it is no longer there. But when you Google the Shadows Motel and RV Park, it does come up with like the for rent or for sale listing for the property. But it was on North Division.
Oh, no. I wonder if it's like that, like Liberty Motel that's on Division by the Wake Up.
Could be. I'm not sure. But anyways, it's not around anymore. It was the hub for like a lot of Aryan gun smuggling stuff in the 80s and 90s. So that's cool. It was in this period that authorities believe he was involved in the murders of 2 neo-Nazi skinhead associates. So in the summer of 1995, prosecutors alleged that Chevie had ordered Ferone Lovelace to murder Jeremy Scott. The reason, Chevie had convinced Scott's wife to join him in a polygamous marriage, and Jeremy stood in the way. So naturally, you have to kill the guy. Prosecutors say the other man, John Cox, may have been killed because Chevie believed he was telling friends of Chevie's plans to rob a series of armored cars. The money from the Arkansas and Washington crimes went to buy land near Priest River, Idaho, where Chevie planned to set up a training camp for revolutionaries. The stolen items were kept in storage lockers rented under fictitious names in Thompson Falls in western Montana and in Old Town, Idaho. Another AO. Old Town's like 20 minutes max from my house. I shop there and, yeah, basically work in Old Town.
Yeah.
It's Newport, but it's the same. Newport is like the Washington town. Old Town is the Idaho town, but they're the same exact fucking town, just different states.
Yeah. They're
separated by a traffic light. By winter, the money was gone, and knowing that William Mueller had come into our inheritance, Chevie decided to go to Arkansas and rob him again. This time, his accomplice was Daniel Lee, a skinhead from Oklahoma with lightning bolts tattooed on his neck. So, obviously, a badass. Daniel was known as Cyclops because he had lost an eye in a bar fight, which just makes him even more of a fucking badass.
Makes sense, because when I was looking at pictures, I saw with just one eye and I was like, oh my fucking God, are you kidding me? But then I saw
pirate.
Yeah, but then I saw who Chevie actually was, and I was like, okay, I'll still update that after.
Okay. So, on January 10th, 1996, Chevie and Daniel, disguised as federal agents, broke into the Muellers' home and waited for the family to return home. When the Muellers returned, Daniel and Chevie overpowered and incapacitated William and Nancy. They then questioned Nancy's 8-year-old daughter, Sarah, about where they could find the cash, guns, and ammunition, forcing her to talk by shocking her with an electric cattle prod. But side note, obviously it was different in the 80s, but no way my 8-year-old knows where I keep any of those fucking things. So why would they torture and question the fucking child?
Yeah. No shit. Like, why don't you ask somebody who actually knows? And
Right. Also, you do that to William or Nancy.
Also, if they were already dressed up as federal agents, why did they feel the need to break into the home and then wait for them to get home? Like, why wouldn't they just wait for them to get home and then go knock on the door and be like, hey, we were hoping we could ask you a couple of questions about blah, 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 blah. And then, like, go in and then do it. It was just like, hey, honey, we got to hurry home. Those federal agents are waiting for us in the living room.
Make it make sense. So after finding the $50,000 in cash, guns, and ammunition, they shot each of the 3 victims with a stun gun, causing them to pass out. They then placed plastic bags over their heads and sealed the bags with duct tape, suffocating them to death. Daniel told Chevie that he could not kill a child, so Chevie did it. They took the victims in Chevie's vehicle to the Illinois Bayou, where they taped rocks to them and threw each body into the water, which was a fast-moving stream despite its status as a bayou. The remains of the family were discovered in Lake Dardanelle near Russellville, Arkansas, in late June of 1996. So they had been in the water for like 6 months.
So by this time, they were already pretty decomposed.
Yeah. So they were found by a woman who was fishing, and she had hooked a shoe and bone. And that made everyone search, obviously, the water, finding the rest of them. But yeah, like I said, she hooked a bone, not like hooked a leg or something, you know? So yeah, they were pretty
she was
decomposed.
just there for catch and release.
Can't say. Never found that. So Gloria, Chevy's mom, later told investigators that her son told her about his role in the Mueller murders shortly after the crime, but she kept quiet about it because, you know, upstanding citizens and all.
Always a mom protecting her son.
Always. In July 1996, the Kehoe family had moved to another remote home in Yak, Montana, with 2 A's. His younger brother, Shane, and his wife and son lived nearby until that winter when Chevy came to get them. The 2 brothers and their families drove south together to look for work in Arizona. Shane knew nothing about the murders until they were traveling together, and Chevy began selling guns because they could not find work. At that point, Chevy told him because some of the guns had been stolen from the Muellers. By then, investigators were tracing other Mueller guns to the Kehoes. Shortly after the family disappeared, the pistol from an empty gun box found in the house was recovered at a Seattle pawn shop and traced to Chevie Kehoe. Months later, another Mueller gun, an AR-15 rifle, was recovered from Sean Haynes, a former Aryan Nations youth leader. It had been sold to him by Chevy. The brothers' luck ran out as they traveled through Ohio, where state troopers stopped them for driving with expired plates. Chevy broke away from being searched because he was carrying a gun, and Shane opened fire. The ensuing gun battle, caught on videotape by camera on the trooper's dashboard, was broadcast nationwide. But both brothers escaped. Also, I think I forgot to put it, but another site had said that nobody was actually killed in that shootout. So that's good. There's no, victims from it. Well, gunshots, but not actual deaths. Both brothers escaped. With help from their parents, the brothers and their families escaped to Utah, where the men found work under assumed names. But according to Shane and his wife, Tana, Chevy's behavior became more violent and erratic. When Chevy said he was thinking of killing his parents so he could raise his younger brothers himself, Shane decided he had to be stopped. Shane also would mention how Chevy had spoken calmly to friends of killing his own wife, Karina, after learning she might be part Native American. To top it off, Chevy had developed an unhealthy interest in Shane's wife, so that probably would have led to him trying to kill Shane so his wife could be his other wife. So Shane fled. On June 16th, 1997, he drove straight through to his family's old hometown of Colville and turned himself into local authorities. The next day, using Shane's information that he gave them, the FBI arrested Chevy as he walked into a feed store in Gunlock, Utah. Chevy was charged with federal racketeering counts that included the 3 murders. At his trial in Little Rock, the principal witnesses for the prosecution were his brother Shane and his mother Gloria. In 1998, Gloria Kehoe had called the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and said her husband had struck her and pointed an AR at her. She said, quote, "My husband was going to kill me. I knew too much. I wanted my nightmare to be over, so she turned him in."
His mom turned him in? Or did he have a wife named Gloria too?
His mom turned his dad Kirby in.
Oh,
so
okay.
Gloria turned her husband in.
Okay.
Sorry, could have worded that. I could have worded that different. So yeah, Chevy's mom Gloria turned her husband Kirby, who was Chevy's dad, into ATF. So Chevie Kehoe was sentenced to 3 life terms. Daniel Lee was sentenced to death. Shane had been sentenced to 24 years for the Ohio shootout. And Chevie Kehoe had been sentenced to 44 months in prison after pleading guilty to racketeering charges and admitting he belonged to his son's white supremacist organization. And Ferone Lovelace was also convicted of murder and sentenced to death.
How is it that Chevy, like outside of like Kirby, but how is it that Chevy gets a lesser sentence than Daniel?
I was trying to figure that out too, because yes, Daniel helped kill and dispose of the bodies of the 3 of them.
He even said he
But
couldn't
Chevy
kill a
had his
kid.
hand too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so Chevy killed the kid. And so that makes sense as to why, like, sentenced to 3 life terms, like a life term for each life he took. But why did Daniel get sentenced to death
I know, that's what I'm confused
and
about.
not life terms?
And then like Fair and Lovelace.
Because as I could see, like, Daniel pretty much was only his accomplice in the murders. Like, I couldn't really find anything that linked him to the gun smuggling and the theft and all that stuff too.
Yeah.
So it's like he still was sentenced to death, and Chevy was involved in all of that with the murders and the guns and all of that. But yet he didn't get sentenced to death.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense to me. Oh, well.
And Shane, he had been sentenced to 24 years for the Ohio shootout, but from what I could find, he wasn't charged for his hand in all the guns and all that stuff because of his cooperation with the authorities.
Yeah. Well, and he didn't know about any of... Well, he wasn't even part of that.
He didn't know about the murders. Yeah. But he was helping with, like, the guns and all that shit. But yeah, they couldn't take away the shootout because it was shooting at officers.
So I did look up pictures of Chevie Kehoe, and I have to say, as far as looks go, you know, he is kind of attractive. He kind of gives off like Luke Perry vibes. Not gonna lie.
I'm doing images now.
So I could kind of see where, you know, women would find him attractive, like based off of looks. But yeah, personality wise,
he had nothing going for him.
In
that department.
Not at. I mean, there's that at least.
Yeah, I think there was more, just like small, pettier crimes in between, but it was more of just the same, like the guns and fucking that.
Yeah,
there was no more murders. Those were the only murders. But like, yeah,
I like that his mom finally grew a backbone and was able to turn her husband in.
Not for being a piece of shit, but because he pulled a gun on her, which I mean is still a piece of shit move. But
all right, guys. Well, that's all we have for you this week. Don't forget to come back next week for another dose of true crime.
If you would like to reach out with case suggestions or comments, any of that, you can find us on Facebook. Are we on Instagram? It's been so long since I've said this.
Yes.
Instagram. So Facebook, Instagram, under Thick Thighs and Murder Vibes. And you can also email us at thickthighsmurdervibes@gmail.com.
Until then, we're getting out of here, guys. Be back next week. Bye.
Bye.